Good morning, everyone. This is Jeff Diltzler. Thank you for joining us for another one of our coffee break technology breaks. It's a happy Friday, first Friday of February. If hopefully you are safe and not under a blanket of snow. If you're in the on the East Coast or Upper East Coast, usually, Josh, we're the ones talking about how we're hit with snow, and they're laughing at us. The tables have turned this time. Happy to be joined this morning by Josh Moore, one of our senior solution architects. Josh, good morning.
Good morning, Jeff. Yeah, great news. I've only had to shovel 2 times this year, so really loving this winter so far.
Please knock on wood.
Yep, done.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about passwords. Probably not the most exciting and, if you will, sexy topic in the security space, but oftentimes it's the small things that get overlooked that cause the biggest problems. And passwords are definitely one of those things, and it's amazing the frequency of conversations we have with potential clients that feel like they've got the password thing all figured out, and we do a little discovery and find out that it's far from that. So looking forward to having a conversation about passwords and best practices and things that people can do, our customers and potential clients can do to improve that. And this is one of those security protocols or security activities that don't have to cost a lot of money. It can be something that everyone can do, and can make a big difference. So we're happy to have that discussion. So, Josh, Let's start a little bit, really about the basics. How often should passwords be changed? What are just some best practices that everyone should be thinking about when it comes to password management?
Yeah, so definitely things are shifting a little bit. It has always been for a number of years at least 8 characters, and a lot of compliance, industry compliance, whether it's HIPAA, NIST, kind of fit into that 8 with a level of complexity. Capitalization, numbers, symbols included to make sure that password is complex. But things are starting to shift, and the way it's shifting are, organizations are starting to make it where they have a minimum of 12 or 16 characters, which makes it a lot more difficult for automated systems to be able to break those passwords. And one of our recommendations that we make to our clients is use a passphrase. A sentence with spaces in it that include the level of complexities is definitely something that has helped organizations to secure their credentials from threat actors. So, really focusing in on that and making sure that that those passwords are unique and complex. If they are, why are you changing them on a regular basis? So that's kind of the philosophy that things are shifting to now.
Yeah, and we have seen it kind of an alarming uptick in issues recently with clients who, it's simple stuff. It's a password, a username and a password is captured, and Office 365 is logged in from a different part of the world.
Yep.
And it really is around using passwords that either one are not complicated enough, or number two are used in other scenarios. So uh, you know I think we'll probably get to that question about how to
Yeah.
keep your passwords managed and protected. But you talked about some of those different scenarios. It used to be 8, and now it's
Yep.
grown to 12 to 16, and with the different characters or a frequency of change. Who typically decides that within an organization?
Yeah, a lot of times it's driven by compliance and passed down. Cybersecurity insurance providers are now really driving a lot of these kind of standards for organizations, and so that kind of pushes information technology, the department, MSPs like us that manage our clients to be able to leverage tools at our disposal to be able to enforce those with users. So, if it's an organization that uses M365, there's password policy management tools that we can use out there to be able to, change those passwords on a regular basis, ensure that that level of complexity, the minimum password length are in place, as well as kind of how often they're changing. Is it every 90 days, every year, 6 months? And those same password policy management tools are also available for customers that are running on-prem. So it's really the information technology department that's executing those controls and making sure they're pushing them out broadly. But a lot of the drivers for these changes are coming from leadership, cybersecurity insurance providers, as well as compliancy.
You're one of our lead guys as it relates to, researching security and
Yep.
seeking certifications and having conversations with clients doing security audits. Has there been a big shift in organizations from the, 8 character with capitalization and character kind of a thing, or non-alphabetical character, to the phrase? I have heard, and this is not my, you're way more knowledgeable of this than I am, but I have heard that there's kind of more of a recommendation that a long phrase that is unique to something you would know, not like your kids' names in a
Yeah.
line, but
Yeah.
something that would be hard to pick out, is actually more complicated and harder for algorithms to beat than a random list of alpha and numeric and symbol. Is that
Yeah,
somewhat
yeah,
accurate?
and that's what I'm seeing too. So, related to the compliancy, I think that a lot of them, like the NIST standard, haven't necessarily updated their guidelines to be in line with what people are experiencing as best practice. So, as time rolls by, I'm sure they'll make the appropriate adjustments. But yes, those passphrases, uh, rarely do threat actors include spaces, and thus it's very challenging to guess those passphrases, where it's a sentence, something that isn't necessarily specifically tied to you, your identity, your family. That definitely makes it a lot more secure. So it's something that I see a lot of companies adopting right now.
As all of us have utilized more and more tools, more and more websites,
Yep.
everything requires a password. What is your recommendation about reusing passwords, crossing over from the personal, the social media passwords, the banking passwords, the passwords to, your hotel membership programs, like, and your Office 365 or AD credentials? What guidance is best for people to consider, to not reuse or to not write down, or all of that around passwords as they've exploded?
Yeah, right. With anything with security, it's kind of um, what's easy to do versus what's appropriate to do, right? From a cybersecurity standpoint. And what's easy to do, Jeff, is just have a single password that you have entered into all of those systems, right? But that can make it really easy for a threat actor if they get a hold of one of those passwords. Say, LinkedIn, when they had that big password breach, a lot of people had the same password and their work email account programmed in there, right? So all of those passwords get sold on the dark web. Now, instead of just them having access to your LinkedIn account, they potentially have access to a lot more. So it definitely makes a lot of sense to make sure that you have separate passwords for all of these different systems, which, as we know, right, all of a sudden that becomes very unwieldy. What's my bank password? What's my Netflix password? What's my, so definitely not having that one password across multiple systems is important. And there's ways to be able to manage that level of complexity. So there's password management tools out there that people can use, as well as there's kind of that layered security approach that really is successful for a lot of organizations, right? It's not just password by the credentials, username and password. It's also important to have that multi-factor authentication. There's other things like biometrics that can be looked at. So definitely don't have that same password across multiple systems if you value your personal information and access to that. So
Yeah, so you mentioned biometrics. Is that a secure approach? Is that one that, if you can get a laptop that allows you to have a fingerprint scan, does that increase the level of security that's available to that user and that device, or is it just kind of another little trick that doesn't do a whole lot to add to the security
yeah,
approach?
yeah, I definitely think, just to the layered approach. Yeah, biometrics are definitely a a good way to make sure it's your identity tying to a set of credentials similar to MFA. I see that being a good addition to that layered approach. I don't want to ever recommend that you're only gonna rely on biometrics as a way of accessing financial data, personally identifiable information. As you know, there's definitely advances in even being able to trick some of those biometric systems. So, my recommendation is take multiple approaches to protecting your identity, and biometrics is one of those that will definitely help in that layered approach.
The other thing you mentioned earlier was password manager, and
Yeah.
it's something that I use. I have found that for me, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. So to try to remember a bunch of super complicated passwords and not write them all down, the
Yeah.
password manager solution has really been, I think, a game changer for me. So
Yeah.
I can have these really complicated passwords, which when you have to enter it into a new Netflix screen or like a hotel, it's really frustrating. But
Yep.
it's valuable to have those in place. Uh, the, the the positive is you can have super complicated passwords you don't have to remember. The potential downside is that all your passwords are now in one place. So how do you feel about password managers? And what do you recommend? Not necessarily, we don't recommend a product, but what do you recommend your clients do to consider as they're thinking about password managers?
Yeah. So, password managers are definitely everybody should be using. And the real value there is, you know, you are you're putting all your eggs in one basket, but then you really only need to focus on protecting that one basket, right? And you can make it very restrictive as far as MFA notifying you. Not only that, but they can tie it into specific IP address ranges. So maybe you're only accessing it from your device. So definitely recommend them. And it's one of those things where you don't need just the 8, 12, 16 character passwords, but you can drop in passwords that are 64 characters in length. A 64-bit password is going to be a lot more secure, a lot more challenging to be able to guess and crack. Some popular ones that I've used. LastPass is very good. I know even at a levity within our organization, we extend out a service to be able to use IT Glue as our personal password manager. And I think that as organizations mature, and I actually in my career before a levity did this as a benefit to employees, is extend that, right? Because if they are using that one password across multiple systems, that could potentially put the business at risk. And if you educate your employees and give them a tool to be able to manage those personal passwords, then there's an extra benefit that you're giving to that employee. You're educating them about cybersecurity, and really helping to protect your posture at the end of the day.
Yeah, those are all great things to consider. And like I have said, for somebody that has a hard time remembering things, it
Yep.
has been a real positive. So, we've talked about a whole bunch of different tools, a
Yep.
couple different approaches. You've mentioned a couple times that the layered approach, there's really no substitute for that. The most
Yep.
complicated password in the world can still be compromised, and without a layered approach, you're really no more safe than if you used, password with an at symbol instead of an A. So, to kind of wrap all of this up, passwords are important, but the most important thing is to have a layered approach. And maybe you can spend a minute talking a little bit about, what we recommend and, what the best practices are.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to identity management. Being able to prove that individual that's trying to access secure data on your corporate network is indeed who they say they are. And in that layered approach, you're going to have multi-factor authentication. You're going to have conditional access. Is it Josh Moore accessing these systems from the United States, from Wisconsin, maybe even from specific IP addresses or locations? So kind of narrowing that scope is helpful to a lot of organizations. Biometrics along with password phrases, ensuring that you're not just telling employees that they need to use a password phrasing complexity, but actually enforcing that and making sure that when they go to change that password, that they're following a set of rules that are in place and enforced. So, and then the biometrics on top of that, right? If it makes it a little bit easier, but you're still meeting all the criteria of the MFA, a known good device, maybe you have mobile device management tied into that to be able to say, hey, Josh is using this device at these locations. That kind of also adds a layer of protection. So, yeah, it's really something that once you go through and you add all those layers in and you prove that indeed this is Josh Moore accessing those systems he needs to have access to, then it's really audit and accountability on the back end. And NIST, and a lot of the security assessments I've done on the back end is being able to show that, hey, this authenticated user, he made it through all those checkpoints, and now he's accessing this secure data that he has access and permissions to, are all part of that layered approach that'll greatly improve the security posture of organizations. So, yep, that would be my approach to protecting business and their secured, protected information.
As we started off talking, passwords aren't the most, it's not the thing that people are calling us saying, I need a better password solution. Can you come talk to me about it? But it's
Yeah.
a critical part of a layered approach and the right security framework that organizations need to have in place. All the other tools are also important, all part of that bigger picture approach. But at the end of the day, passwords is the key to the kingdom, and you've got to make sure that those are kept secure and as best as they can be. So, Josh, thanks for sharing all the information. I think we've got
Yeah.
a few more slides about some future activities and things. If you do have any questions, I should have mentioned this earlier. Don't hesitate to drop them into the chat. We'll take a peek at them quick here before we wrap up. Couple events coming up. We've got a Nets and Networks event around March Madness, the opening day of the basketball tournament. We're going to host some people at the Thirsty Goat in Madison. So you can go to alevityit.com/events to see more details about that. It's kind of an open house concept. So stop for lunch, stop for, a drink after work. We'll be having some fun, watching some games, hanging out. Really excited to have the opportunity to start to be out and about with our clients as we hopefully can do that more and more here. So make sure you're paying attention to that and looking at alevityit.com/events for any other upcoming events, presentations, webinars that may be of interest. We have a a gift card, be able to scan the code. My brain stopped for a second. The QR code here to scan to get your coffee card, your $5 gift card for attending. So don't hesitate to do that quickly here. You can also type in that URL if fast at typing, or grab this screenshot to claim that. So thanks again, Josh, for joining.
Thank
Happy
you
to
for
have
having me.
you at all of our coffee breaks. You bring a great perspective and obviously a ton of knowledge and experience that is very valuable for all that attend. You can reach out to either one of us or to anyone else at Alevity or Gordon Flesh if we can help. It'll all get to the right people, and we'll get in touch and start to make some progress on your initiatives.